Hello, everybody. Welcome to Behind Enemy Lines with Terry and Mike on our Tuesday night special. So we have a very, very special guest that has a spot close to my heart because of the battles that I've been going through here. Oh my God. And this poor mom, and I give her a lot of credit because she's going through the same stuff, but she's a woman having to deal with all those nuts and Antifa and those radical leftists. And what her daughter went through. So we have Erin Lee on today, and she's going to share her story, and we're going to do a little clip in a little bit to show upcoming documentary. Right, Erin has. So Mike, I'll let you say a little bit. You can pass it to Erin, and let's show the documentary, and then we'll jump in all this crazy stuff.
Yeah. Well, Erin, thank you for joining us tonight. You could give the audience a little bit of a background on who you are and what made you rise up to declare war on these degenerates running our schools and school boards.
Yeah, well, I can't emphasize enough that 4 years ago, I was your typical leftist, virtue signaling, liberal white woman who was politically disengaged, not paying attention, trusting the government to educate my kids. And my 12-year-old daughter got recruited into a secret gender and sexuality club that was disguised as an art club. At barely 12 years old, it was the height of COVID, and they invited in these radical predators to groom the kids. One runs an organization for 2-year-olds called Skittles to talk about gender and sex. And they taught her to keep it all a secret from me. They taught her if you're not fully comfortable in your body, that means you're a transgender boy. She latched on to that label. They talked about sexual attraction when she didn't know who she was attracted to. They told her she was queer, and they gave her swag and toys to correspond with her new labels. They talked about things like puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, how to get a gender-affirming care letter in her school without parent knowledge or consent. And they just repeatedly drove home, your parents aren't safe. You don't have to tell them about this meeting. And we're lucky that she did tell us what happened, but it took about a year to get our daughter out of a cult. I mean, it was a cult mentality that got a hold of her and help her through her confusion over her sex. And now we're able to be really public and help other families that are going through this. And what I've learned is that it's thousands and thousands of families across the country who are dealing with a very similar situation. So we made a documentary film about it. It's actually available now. It's out for free. People can watch it on YouTube and Rumble. It's at artclubmovie.com. And I would love to share that trailer with everyone.
Yeah, let's go ahead and run that, and then we'll dive deeper into your story, and then we've got a lot. I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions for you.
I kind of realize now that I had been indoctrinated myself into thinking that this could be real. I was a product of the society we live in now, where everyone thinks that this is completely normal, that people can be any gender they want. And in that very moment, I thought potentially she could be transgender.
You can choose to be a boy, a girl, neither, or both.
The pronoun question is a direct attack on the nature of creation and the nature of God.
We set them up and say, if you don't go down this path, you're going to commit suicide.
We're going to lose our country, we're going to lose our freedoms, we're going to lose our families, we're going to lose everything.
My number one advice to parents is get your kids out of public schools. They're not safe.
I think she came into my office with a flag she was given during this class and looked at me with a smile and said, "Dad, I'm transgender." And then basically scurried off.
I went through a range of emotions. I started with wondering if it was real, and then realizing this isn't real. I know my daughter. It took me a minute. It was just so much shock.
Yeah.
Nothing could have ever prepared us for that moment. It was just a regular Tuesday, and she came home and she was a whole different person.
When I first heard Erin's story, I knew that this should be shared with the nation. And that is why we have created this documentary. This is simply their authentic, first-hand experience.
I'm going to have to watch that. So tell the people about our club, right? Tell them what our club was, and let my daughter go to our club and explain what that is.
Yeah, I cannot emphasize enough. It was 2021. It's the height of COVID. We've just moved across the country from Florida to Colorado. I've got a shy, artsy, quirky kid, which we love her for. She's like uniquely cool, and we always celebrated her for that, but she didn't fit into what the other girls were doing. And she was
Sure.
so vulnerable. And her teacher knew that she had not made a single connection with someone her age. And her teacher asked her to come to an art club. My daughter legitimately did not know what she was walking into until she was glitter bombed by these predators with, LGBTQIA plus ideology. It was transgenderism. It was who are you sexually attracted to? They did an activity called the genderbread person, which has them plot their point of sexual attraction from male to female. Talks about how gender is a spectrum. It's never binary. And, I learned that they had been subtly indoctrinating her for years in the public school district with pronoun conversation and reading assignments with these vile books. They gave her a book called George that was all about transgenderism as a reading assignment at 11 years old. And
That's
so
insane.
we're just so lucky she told us what happened, but I cannot stress enough. She's the last kid I thought this could happen to. She's so, precocious and emotionally intelligent, and just did not expect that this could happen to her. But if it can happen to us, it can truly happen to anyone. And, as I said, we weren't Christian at the time. We were really politically disengaged, kind of,
Sure.
middle ground, but left voters. We were Democrat voters. I had voted for Biden prior to
Default
this happening.
Democrats, yeah.
Well, and that seems to be who this typically happens to, as I've met so many other families who have been through this. We were instantly red pilled. I mean, I was so naive to go to the school and think that they cared, think that they would go, oh, this is wrong. This shouldn't have happened. And the opposite occurred. They were proud of what they had done to her. They called Child Protective Services. When we removed our daughter from the school, 2 days later, after they had spun our whole family into the worst, week of our life that turned into the worst year of our life as a family, they attacked us with Child Protective Services because it was clear we were not going to go along with her new gender identity and be on board with what they had done. They referred to us as barriers that have to be removed. They colluded with each other. I've looked at public record emails where, they said these parents don't have a right to know what's happening and they're going to try to dictate everything for their children. And here's how you can reject that when that's their next move. It's insane. And as I learned, our whole school board is radically woke.
Oh, same with ours.
Radical. Like half of them have trans identifying kids. They are funded by the Federal Teachers Union, by Pat Stryker, who is one of the lead billionaire funders of the transgender movement, lives here in my town and essentially purchased our school board. And so I was this squeaky wheel that they didn't anticipate. And I have really been a thorn in their side ever since. There's been a mass exodus from the school district. We have a federal ongoing lawsuit that actually Pam Bondi took our case. Now the Attorney General, but America First Policy Institute is still representing us in the Court of Appeals here in the 10th Circuit. So, and I founded Protect Kids Colorado, an organization to help other families and pass sensible law to combat this. So they awakened the wrong mama bear. I'll say that.
Yeah,
It's
sounds like
great.
it. Well,
So,
I mean, what
Go
makes
ahead,
this
Mike.
so like insidious too is the fact that, as you said, your daughter didn't even realize that this was an LGBTQ whatever recruitment event. She thought this was a legitimate art club. It's very understandable too for her to have trouble adapting, coming from Florida, moving to Colorado, wildly different cultures. And it's going to take some time to fit in. It sounds like that's part of what they leveraged and really took advantage of to try to push her into this ideology and indoctrination. And then again, the fact that, they refer to you as barriers, the parents are barriers. I guess that's kind of like, being a inseminated person. I guess that's now the terminology the left wants to use for a mother. But it's so sick and disgusting that this all has to be done behind the scenes, and they try to paint you as a villain and then try to essentially use a combination of fear and peer pressure to get you to remain silent. And I think that's part of why we're seeing such a giant turnaround right now, is this probably was effective for a lot of parents as they were going through it. Luckily, you had the courage to continue to fight back and continue to take a stand. But this is something that is effective. It works on a lot of parents. It gets them to shut up, to start questioning their values, to think that maybe they're the ones that are wrong. And I guess this is the way the world is going now. And, I guess we'd rather have a live son than a dead daughter, even though that myth's falling apart now too, as more studies studies are showing you the trans suicide rate actually increases after care, not decreases after gender affirming care. But no, I mean, what you went through is awful. And you said other parents have kind of united around you after you put your foot down. Is that still what you're seeing now?
It is. Well, it's first off, this is an all-out assault on adolescent girls. If you
Yes.
look historically at transgenderism, it was adult males, it was autogynephilia, it was there were no adolescent girls experiencing it. It's almost like, you know, the epidemic of anorexia, except in this case, the doctors are giving the girls diet pills and telling them not to tell their parents that they're throwing up their food. I mean, it's so insidious, but they're absolutely targeting adolescent girls, and that's what I'm seeing across the board. Is that, you know, they're catching them when puberty starts. Puberty sucks. No girl wants to go through that. Of course, they're uncomfortable in their body. I'm nearly 40. I'm not comfortable in my body every day. You know what 12-year-old girl is. And so they're absolutely targeting them with this ideology. And, you know, it's really scary to watch, because what little girl is fully comfortable in their body? That's just not, they're such an easy target, and they're clearly being taken advantage of. And this whole secrecy that surrounds it, they know what they're doing is wrong. And that's what a cult does. They tell the cult member, your family isn't safe. They isolate kids from their families. And we were bullied with that suicide myth. I can't emphasize enough that, yes, I'm so glad we got our daughter off the conveyor belt of transgenderism before she permanently mutilated her body, because we live in a state where 12-year-olds control their own healthcare. And my daughter was taught that before I even understood that I didn't have a right to consent to her healthcare. We took her to a therapist. We learned the hard way that we live in a state where they are legally required to affirm gender confused youth. Therapists who are licensed in the state cannot question a child who believes they're the opposite sex. And so my child had been pushed to see a therapist without my knowledge, in a state where they would be forced to push her down this path. Thank God we found out and plucked her off of that conveyor belt. But even at that point, we were bullied with the suicide myth. When she became suicidal because of this mindset, it was our fault, but also the doctor made us leave the room for the mental health assessment. And when we came, because we took her to the pediatrician, like the therapist made her worse. We went to a therapist for help, thinking, I don't know how to talk about this. We need a professional. The therapy made her worse. They pushed her further into this identity that she felt like she was a boy named Toby. And so they furthered her Toby identity. And then when she became suicidal because therapy made her worse, we went to our trusted pediatrician, who had me leave the room for the mental health assessment. And when I came back in, she had already been written a prescription for Zoloft, which is a psychotropic drug that is no more beneficial than a 30-minute walk. But we were bullied into fulfilling that prescription. Do you want her to die? Do you want her to kill herself? Then you're going to have to fill this prescription. She's 12. She's in charge of her mental health care. It's not really your choice. Fill this prescription if you don't want her to die. And we were bullied into medicating her. And so I can only imagine how that happens with the parents, with the puberty blockers and the cross-sex hormones, where you go into that doctor's office and you're terrified for your child's life. You just want to keep them alive. And then they bully you with the suicide myth. Would you rather have a living son or a dead daughter? You have to medicalize them. And that's what's happening to parents across the country. I have so much empathy for the ones who feel forced into medicalizing their kids against their will.
Yeah, in Illinois, it's exactly the same. You know, what pisses me off is that, like, you know, when your kids go to school and they need an aspirin or a prescribed medication from the doctor, you got to get, like, it's a big deal, sign this and that. And in Illinois, if they want to change I got boy-girl twins. If my son wants to be a boy or a girl and vice versa, they don't even have to tell us, just like you. But if I want to give an aspirin, it's a big deal, right? You got to sign all this bullshit, and it's appalling. I got involved in 2021 just like you. And I was never involved. I was a Democrat. I transitioned in like around 2013, and I'm old. Like I'm a grandpa dad. I got seniors in high school at 63, and I got remarried. But you know, my mom and dad, you know, Southwest side Italian Union. I knew nothing but Democrat. I was never involved. You know, I never involved politically until when my kids were going into freshman year. About the forced masking. I was like, what the hell? They're freshmen. It's going to be hard on these kids, right? And we were right as parents. But what started to trigger me right before, like 3 weeks before they graduated 8th grade, my son Anthony came in and said, you know, because I'm trying to keep my kids from being indoctrinated with the, you know, the leftist politics. I'm like, oh, you know, so I always talk to them, right? And my wife hates that, but too bad. And so my son comes to me like, Dad, you're not going to believe this. He goes, my teacher told me there's no such thing as the American dream. I'm like, what? She goes, there's no such thing as American dream. It's overrated. It's not there for everybody. I'm like, sit at home. I made him sit down. I go, all right, tell me what you heard. And he, he's like, yeah, she said it's not there. It's overrated, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, are you serious? He's like, yeah. So I called the principal, left a message. He called me back the next day and he goes, yeah, Mr. Newsom, I got your message about Anthony. Oh, what I said on my message, I go, I hope my son heard wrong, right? I hope he misunderstood, because a kid in 8th grade like that, boy, girl, black, white, sex, should think they could go to Mars, and have a teacher say that is not acceptable. So he goes, well, Anthony heard correctly, but it wasn't an educational class. It was just conversational. And I'm like, okay, that's just as bad. I go, it's just as bad. My kids are graduating in 3 weeks, so I'm not going to make a big deal about this because they're, leaving. But this is unacceptable, and they shouldn't be saying this. Little did I know what I was creeping into, all the stuff we're talking about. It's like I went for the masking. I went to the school board, and it was all 12 moms and a dad, and then they showed me the genderqueer book. I actually thought the mom was full of shit when she taught. I'm like, that's not in the kid's school. She's like, I'm like, so I had my son Anthony go to the library. He's a freshman, and I had him use his phone and take pictures. I'm like, holy shit, it's in the school. I can't believe this is in the school. So I would thought in 2021, I thought I'd get an army of parents, right? Democrat, Republican, independents. And so if you're still a Democrat in this day and age, you're a whack job, right? You're just nuts. Not like my mom and dad everywhere near. They're not that. My 86-year-old parents are not Democrats anymore. So if you're a Democrat, like once, the people you hung around, they're nuts. They're nuts. And, all due respect. And if you're a Republican in my neighborhood too, just like what you went through, they're scared to speak up.
Yeah.
And then when I started saying, I'm like, oh, screw that. I ain't scared. They're like, and all of a sudden here I am. I got national attention from fighting for my kids, which it shouldn't happen. Then I had to go up and down the bleachers. I in my phone, I had that picture from genderqueer, and I go up, and my kids were freshmen. He played football and wrestling. So I'd go up and down. I would not show the moms, but I show the dads. I go, hey, this is in your kids' school? So he's like, no, wait, honey, look at this. This is in their school. I'm like, yeah, will you help me? But no one shows up. I had one dad come, two dads, and they don't get involved, or they just don't know how bad it is, right? I mean, it's now happening the last 2 years. People are starting to wake up and stuff. But I mean, everything it just resonates with me. I shared some of the stuff of what they were doing in the schools with the kids, telling them that, their sex is assigned. This is our sophomores. What are they, 15, 14? Your sex is assigned at birth. No, it's not. Right? I mean, they're pushing all this crap. Then they had that all my spies are watching from Downers Grove. The people that hate us, my local neighbor, they watch every show. All right. Yes, that transvestite woman is a beast. She looked like she just walked out of prison. So criticize me. You got this woman that's bigger than me. She looks like she plays football for the Bears, telling the kids about their pronouns and that they were assigned their sex by the doctors. You guys are nuts. This is not normal, like Trump says. It's not normal. You are the bad people, not us.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead, Aaron. You jump in there.
Oh, I was just going to say, your example of what you went through with your kids is such a good example for all parents of what do you think is going to happen when you leave your kid entrusted to complete strangers for 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, even outside of the curriculum, the conversations that happen in the vicinity of your kids. Like, of course, these things are going to be spoken over them. The entire teaching industry has been captured by this ideology. And I think, Mike, last time I was on with you, I talked about how most teachers are not bad people, but the entire industry has been captured at the university level. And so I actually was an elementary teacher. I started school in the early 2000s, and I was indoctrinated into thinking that we believe whatever a child tells us, that we always assume that parents aren't safe, that we, diversity, equity, and inclusion is the most important thing you can teach a kid. And so I had been indoctrinated into that. And so I caution all parents, as I said in the movie preview, get your kids out of public schools. There's no circumstance in which your public school is the safest or best educational option for your kids. We've gotten to a place now as a country where it's not safe to put your kids in the public school. And to your point too, Terry, I know you talked about how you were a leftist. The thing that really woke me up was when I went to the liberal news outlets and I thought, surely someone's going to share my story. And I went to my liberal friends and family, and I thought, surely someone's going to agree with me that what happened was wrong and that I should be speaking up about what happened. And everyone turned their back on me. No liberal news outlet would cover it. And the people who embraced me were conservatives and Christians. The conservative outlets were chomping at the bit to help me. And the Christians were praying over me and welcoming me in and saying, let me help you.
They're like all this stuff over your head and praying, and you feel, and I appreciate it. You know, I mean, I do. I was raised a Catholic. I'm not a good Catholic, which makes me a normal Catholic. I could have confession. I start over on Monday. But those, and I say a lot of grandpas, Catholics, were still coming and sitting and watching and helping. It's like the grandparents are more concerned than their sons are. The grandfathers are more worried than their sons are. The mothers are more worried in general than the fathers, right? The ones that wake up or are paying attention. So it's a lot of moms and a couple dads. And then the grandfathers are like, what the hell? They're like, what's going on? Right. But their kids aren't, like, their sons aren't getting involved, which is very upsetting.
Well, you know, I think this actually really highlights something that both of you have touched on, because Terry, you mentioned how you went around, you showed all these parents what was going on. The fathers were upset, the mothers were upset, but nobody showed up to lift a finger or do anything. And same with you, Aaron. A lot of your friends abandoned you, walked away once you started to speak out. I think there's another symptom of the modern left, and especially their war on masculinity. You know, a lot of these fathers, they knew instinctually that this was wrong, but then they lacked the courage to actually do something about it. But you go back a generation to the grandparents, they're willing to fight for their kids, for their grandkids, and for the future on normal values that should cross party lines. But now, you know, especially leftists that are part of the club, they know what happens if they speak out. They see it all the time. The minute you step out of step with the narrative, with the agenda, then you're an outcast. You lose your friend group. You're pushed out of everything, and it disrupts your life completely. You know, again, it's a cult. And if you differ at all from the cult's ideology, then you're an outcast. You're excommunicated from the cult, from the church. And that's part of why this has taken so long to dissipate. And Aaron, I want to get on to one other item that you touched on. This originates at the college. It's people being programmed into this ideology and thinking that somehow they have the moral high ground, that's what they're being told, that's the most important thing, is queering your kids. If there is even an inkling that they might not be straight or anything else, it's your job to exploit that as a teacher. Now, that's the most important thing. It isn't teaching kids reading, writing, arithmetic. It's teaching them LGBTQ ideology, environmentalism, and to hate America. And this is what now is the fundamentals as far as they're concerned in our classrooms. It isn't about making people critical thinkers, giving them the skills they need to be successful in the world. It's about making them good, indoctrinated leftists that will not step out of line.
Yeah, and I say, you know, like so I work with Gays Against Groomers, a log cabin Republicans. And a few years I was at Charlie Kirk's America Fest, and I went out with this married couple from California, Gays Against Groomers chapter leaders, and I think was in Los Angeles. And it was funny. I forgot Megan. God, you know. So I went. So we were having drinks, and it was kind of resonated. What one of them said is like, you know, these people set us back 25 years. And what's ironic, these people, a lot of them are straight, pasty white liberal Karens that are not even gay, saying what the gay people want. And they set us back 25 years. You know, we had people fight for us, right? Really hard. From back, like when I was in high school, I was a prick, you know what I mean? So they went through it. I mean, it was rough on, you know, so I understand that. And I grew up, I got older. But she said, all we want to do is be treated with respect, dignity, and equality. Oh, we don't want to get beat up either. I was like, and that's all they want, right? But these whack jobs that are fighting against us and our kids now, they don't want equality. They want more benefits, and they want more than equality, right? They want to push the boundaries on us above and beyond equality, and we're supposed to accept it. And if we don't accept it, they want to punish us, intimidate us, harass us, threaten us, and shun us as if we're the bad people.
Yeah, Gays Against Groomers is actually some of my best friends and one of my biggest allies in the work that I do. And, you know, they've really helped me to understand that transing kids is conversion therapy. Like the law that requires therapists to transition, I'm pointing to this because I wrote an amicus brief. It's actually being challenged at the Supreme Court. So hopefully the Supreme Court has taken it up. So hopefully we'll strike down the law that requires therapists to affirm children. But it's conversion therapy. a lot of
No.
these kids are LGB, and you're trying to trans the gay away. It's almost homophobic in and of itself. It's conversion therapy of what is likely effeminate gay boys and masculine lesbian girls or autistic children. Really, majority of them are LGB or autistic, and it's performing conversion therapy on these kids to try to trans away their inherent qualities that don't need to be transed away.
Yeah, well, think about me. I grew up in the 70s. I'm an Italian guy with the name Terry. So I was like totally confused. I'm kidding. Joking. I'm joking. I was the only Terry amongst my friends. Hey, to Anthony, Gino, Terry. It's a girl, boy, girl name.
Well, you know, this is what we're seeing now today, though, is kind of, it took a long way to get here, like you're both kind of touching on there, that I think, you know, I've said this multiple times, if it really had just ended at, you know, equal rights and some sort of, whether it was gay marriage or well, what was the other, civil unions or whatever, that you know, gay couples wanted access to the same rights that straight couples had, whether it was for transferring property, for, you know, tax purposes, everything else. And if that's where it had ended, I wouldn't have cared. I'll be honest. You know, they can do whatever they want in their home, but the problem is the slippery slope argument. We've watched it come true over the last 10 years. And you bring that up if you ever want to watch somebody's head melt down, but you can bring up the clips from 10, 12 years ago when we were talking about all this, and then compare it to where we're at today. And where they cross the line is wanting access to your children, whether that's for the drag shows or now working through the schools to indoctrinate and recruit. That this is an organized recruiting operation, like you kind of touched on there, Aaron, that they're taking vulnerable kids that are either a little different, they don't fit in. Some of them I do think have, you know, autism or Asperger's, whatever else. They leverage that, they take advantage of that, and they put them into this this group and tell them, well, no, we're your new friends, we're the ones that are going to be here to support you, and they try to separate them from their parents. Yeah, you can't trust their parents, they don't understand you, they're not going to back you up, they're not going to support you. In fact, they're actually part of the problem. And that's again this leftist ideology that we see invasive in everything. You know, the same thing that Stalin did, same thing Mao did, is separate children from their parents, indoctrinate them, make them slaves to the state.
Absolutely.
So, Aaron, I don't know if you have about a year and a half ago, I call, you know, my governor, I call him BJ Prickster, not JB Prickster, BJ Prickster.
My family in Illinois calls him Fat Boy, but that's good too.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. You're from the Champaign area, or your family is. So he put in a book banning bill, and it was a big deal. Him and Janulius and all them bragging about it. And so, like, say if we take over our radical Marxist school board, just like yours, right? The superintendent, they're all leftist scum creeps, man. And say if we win over the school board, it's supposed to be at the local level, right? And you can have that control. That's what it's supposed to be. And then we say, wow, we want to get rid of genderqueer. I got big posters here of genderqueer. Oh, I got to show you this. This is what put me on the map right here. I brought it to the school board meeting. I covered this so I could show it out. I didn't have it covered at the school board. I had 6 of them, big posters.
Do you know the author of that book has come out and said it was never intended for children?
Yeah.
Even the author of that book has said it's not for kids.
Yes. And then they tried to change it later. And so I'm sorry, I'm digressing here. So I had 6 posters made, right? And this was 2021. And I'm like, I went nuts when I saw that. I'm like, there's no way that's in the school. I couldn't believe it was in the kids' books. So I spent $350 and I got all these posters here, and none of the parents wanted to hold them. They're scared, like you're talking about. They're intimidated. They're worried. So I'm like, so I have friends that are Proud Boys. Yes, you guys, spies are looking. I got friends that were Proud Boys. They're fathers, just like us. One of them lives over here. I said, hey, would you guys do me a favor? Hold my posters. Everyone's scared. They're like, sure. I go, don't wear your Proud Boys colors. Don't do your bullshit. I just come there as fathers because I don't want to detract from why we're here, right? And they're like, yeah, no problem. So I tell the other parents, I'm like, hey, you know, I got the Proud Boys, you know, coming as dads. And so it got out to the leftists, right? Oh my God, they flipped the leftist newspapers. Sun Times showed up, WGN, Proud Boys take over school board. They didn't do anything. They said nothing. They held my signs. So the front page of the Sun Times, the third page, and the full pages, Proud Boys take over school board meeting. They totally lied. And they made it all about the Proud Boys. And then
they control the narrative.
Yeah,
yeah.
he says that book that's not. I had to appeal it. I mean, it's a long battle. Went on for like a year. This book does not fit the definition of pornography. The author's intent is not to stimulate and arouse. I'm like, you know what it says in there. Can't wait to have your seat crack in my mouth. All that. I'm like, what does that mean? That's stimulate and arouse. Are you kidding me? How do you know what the author's intent is? And then
It's almost worse. You're trying to normalize that with 5-year-olds, like,
Yeah.
and not sexually arouse them because that's normal. We just talk about putting that in our mouth
Yeah.
during reading class, like that. That's almost worse.
Yeah, and ours was in high school, so they try to say it's not in grammar school. I go, so what? We got 13-year-olds that are sometimes in high school. That doesn't matter. These are our kids, And then during the appeal, when they were talking about, they had the librarians, sitting across there. I go, what's your definition of pornography? There's me and another mom. There's one principal here. It's kind of fun in this big room. I look at these two idiots from Downers Grove High School. I know you guys are watching. I said, well, can you please explain me your definition of pornography? They look at each other. Can we get back at you on that? I'm like, wait a minute. I go, the principal just said, you guys define what goes in the library books. And you're here talking about porn. The whole country knows we're here talking about porn that we label as porn. And you don't know the definition of pornography? No wonder we have pornography in our kids' school. I go, how about this? My son, I got boy. I would like to be fair to my son, and I'd like to have Playboy in the school. I was being sarcastic, right? Oh, that's pornography. I go, it's not. A woman's body's beautiful. There's no sex going on. I mean, we should put that in a library. It's beautiful art. And then they got,
Careful, you might give them ideas.
They say it's award winning, right? I go, Playboy wins lots of awards, and they got great stories in there. And of course, I lost the appeal. Oh, I'm sorry. Then we had then the superintendent got to pick a panel of parents, right? This was after the masking was done, right? So we had a panel of parents and teachers. So I go with this other Polish mom who was scared to death, because it was like we sat in the front and they were around us in a U, all of them. And I'm standing out in front. They had police there. And I see all these jamokes walking in with masks. I'm standing at the cops are on our side. I'm like, oh my God, there's the independent school teachers and parents. They all got masks on. He handpicked all these leftist scumbags that I had to present my case to them. And the other mom was crying because it was very intimidating. I was kind of like, fuck you guys. I was yelling at them and stuff. And of course they all voted, oh, this is not pornography. And, we lost.
They're so clearly after our children, and it's transgender ideology is such a Marxist ideology. It has captured every facet of our society. The reason we can't get rid of it is because it's taken decades to get here. It's not just the higher education system, it's child protective services, it's law enforcement, it's our lower education, it's the medical system, it's the mental health establishment. All of our major medical industries have been captured by this ideology, even though the majority of their members don't agree with it. Suddenly telling the truth and doing the right thing has become courage, which is insane to me. Like, doing the right thing isn't brave, it's just right. When people call me brave, I'm like, no, I'm just telling the truth. Like, that's not really bravery, that's just honesty. But that's where we've gotten now, is that telling the truth has become the brave thing. And I wanted to point out that here in Colorado, where I live, they're actually running the final hearing of a bill tomorrow, Senate Bill 63, which will make it impossible for a parent to challenge any book. They are essentially eradicating any system for a parent in any school district to challenge a book in any way. They're just doubling down on nope, we're the ultimate deciding factor and you cannot challenge it. They're authoritarian on the issue of presenting pornography to children.
It's like that here. And I like your opinion on Colorado. So, I'm glad about them dumping the Department of Education. I did an interview earlier this week, I think, with Emerald, and she asked me about that. And I said, I think it's a great thing. But if you live in a state like Illinois, and I'm assuming Colorado, they're basically giving Pritzker all this money to kind of do whatever they wanted to be. I mean, I don't understand how it's going to work. We're screwed, right? Illinois and Colorado.
I've been getting this question a lot, and I lost a lot of followers when I broke the story that Trump had signed that executive order to dismantle the Department of Education. I lost 100 followers because people aren't ready to hear the truth that we spent trillions of dollars on the DOE over the last 4 decades, and we have gotten progressively worse, that it's just bureaucrat money. And so the way I view it is we're no longer going to have a federal government overlord that is dictating in all 50 states these woke ideologies. It will enable the red states to to control their own education and get out of the nonsense that the federal teachers unions and the DOE and the bureaucrats are pushing on them, it's going to get harder in blue states. It's not going to get easier. Like I don't necessarily think it's going to get worse. It's already really bad here. But the reality is that less than 10% of public school funding comes from the federal government. It's already state controlled and funded. So it's not really going to change a whole lot for us here in the blue states, except that we have to keep pushing back and fighting. It's not going to get easier for us.
Well, I think you're exactly. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. I think my kid's school, Downers Grove North and South, and I looked that up, right? I'm like, oh, great, they're going to keep the federal funding. And I'm like, oh, shit. It's like for the two, it's still a lot of money, right? For the two schools, it's $4 million, but for the state money that Pritzker controls, it's like $72 million or something like that. So that's like,
Yeah. Well, I think I think ending the Department of Education is a good idea because look how the Biden administration and Obama, for that matter, used it. They held schools hostage with the school lunch program funding in order to open up the gyms and the bathrooms to cross-gender, to make it open for everybody. It's a field day. Anybody can use the women's restroom. And if you don't let your students do that, if you don't put a litter box in there for the kids that identify as cats, then we're going to eliminate your funding for the school lunch program. But to both of your points here, I'm actually kind of glad that these insane leftists have picked this as a hill to die on, because I think that really has energized the opposition as they learn more and more about it, and we're seeing support for the left disintegrate. I mean, they're down to an all-time low approval rating, going all the way back to the 90s. The last time they were this low, depending on which poll you believe, somewhere between 23 and 29% support. You're averaging around 27. But yeah, unfortunately for you guys in blue states, it is going to make things worse because they're going to double down on stupid. And, more I see about this, the more I see with these insane teachers, administrators, and school board officials, the more I understand why we used to burn witches at the stake. Because sometimes there's a problem that's so evil, you just have to get rid of it.
Uh-oh, you just made a threat there. You're in trouble. You're screwed.
That's how I feel about the DOE, and that's how I feel about public schools in general. They're irredeemable. I appreciate organizations like Moms for Liberty who have the best intentions of fixing it. Maybe in the red states they can, but in states like Illinois and Colorado, we have to burn it down to the ground and start over. We're not going to fix it from here. But I wanted to point out too, my philosophy on all the executive orders is what I just stated, that listen, in these blue states, our problems are not going to be magically solved. He's wielding the power of the federal government as best he can. This pendulum had swung so far to the left that Trump basically took the pendulum and was like, stop, I'm going to stop this pendulum from swinging. But it's up to us in these radical blue states to take it and swing it back. So it's on all these fronts. It's not going to get easier for us in these states. We're now going to have to work harder. It's just that we're not moving further and further to the left anymore. He stopped the bleeding. Now we have to fix it.
Yeah.
I think you really what it is it allows the red states to produce better students. I don't know if you've ever seen there's another educational documentary called The Cartels. You ever seen that, Aaron?
I haven't.
If you haven't, I'd highly recommend it. It was a guy, I think he was a journalist in New Jersey, just a local TV reporter. He started looking into all the money the school district was getting because they were, I think, second from the top for spending per student, but second from the bottom. They were producing the second stupidest kids in the country and spending, almost the most on them, over $100,000 per student in New Jersey. So he started digging into where all the waste was, the indoctrination, and just the fact that these administrators and their administrative staff, which keeps growing and growing and growing with a lot of the money that comes out of the federal Department of Education, that they don't really care about the students. What they care about are their paychecks and indoctrination and making good leftists going forward. I called you a default Democrat earlier, but that's really what they want to churn out of these schools, make people default Democrats. So they actually have to think. You have to have some level of critical thinking skills to move out of the norm where everybody's kind of being programmed into. And to leave the cult, you have to have an independent mind. And that's hard for a lot of people. But I do think breaking up this money, ending the Department of Education means they can't hold schools hostage, force them to teach this kind of ideological nonsense in states that do want to make smarter students and do want to actually improve people's lives. Now they're going to have those funds, and they're not going to have the shackles from the federal DOE on them declaring, what they have to teach in the classroom. And I do think a lot of the red states will put a much bigger emphasis on reading, writing, arithmetic, our history, and things that actually matter. Critical thinking skills, maybe a class of common sense. Teach people how to maybe balance a budget. how credit cards work, things like that. Get them actually prepared for the real world. And there's a real opportunity right now for the red states and even some of the purple states to implement policy like that. Because, like you said, Aaron, since the founding of the Department of Education, every single year, our test scores have gotten worse, our kids have gotten stupider, and it is an utter failure from top to the bottom. It is absolutely irredeemable, and there is no reason at all to continue the federal Department of Education at the federal level.
And you hit the nail on the head with the administration. That's where all the costs are going. They're continuing to build their administrative cabinets. And like in my district, I would give myself credit for this. They've had a mass exodus of students, and they're faced with having to consolidate and close schools. And instead of doing that, they just raised our taxes. No, we're not going to consolidate schools. We'll just charge the taxpayers more money. And as a response to my family's incident, they hate me so much. They have put out, public statements slandering me. They've put out emails to my whole community saying that I'm a liar and that they've handled me. My school district has. But a response to me was creating a DEI cabinet, making over $1 million annually between the three of them. They even hired a full-time LGBTQIA+ coordinator who has it in her job description to coach students on LGBTQ, to create more gender support plans, which are these secret transition plans that they're transitioning kids behind parents' backs in elementary schools. They have it for her to increase the GSA clubs, these gender and sexuality awareness clubs, and bring all of the learning in-house. Their response to me was to add more than $1 million worth of administrative staff specifically for DEI. That's what's happening with dollars in our public schools.
I'm getting my posters out. The left hates my posters. So here's some new ones too. That's not actually, see this one here? Ooh, let's see. Stop pretending your racism is patriotism. My kid's principal right now, before she came here 2 years ago, she gave this to every teacher with a cupcake on it over Christmas. Stop. And so one of the teachers is a good friend of mine. He took that picture and sent it to me. This here was a field trip in my kid's school. African American and Hispanic kids only, no white kids were allowed to go on it. That we stopped that. But it's people don't even know this stuff exists.
You stopped that. That's impressive. That's so impressive. And I cannot stress enough to people who are stuck in the blue states, you have to stay and fight. I get all the time, like, why don't you just go home to Florida? Like, why don't you just leave? I don't understand why you're still there fighting. And it's like, well, what happens in California comes to Colorado. And then what happens in Colorado goes to the entire nation. Like, we are the stopping point. I have this opportunity to stop the insanity from spreading to the rest of the country. We cannot forsake there's 23 states that still have not banned gender affirming care for children, gender mutilation of children. We are still doing Mengele-like experiments on children in 23 states. We have so much work left to do in these blue states that we can't just flee them and we can't just forsake them. There are, 80% of kids will be stuck in the public school system. No matter how many smart parents pull their kids out, majority of kids will stay in. And so we have to stay here and fight for sensible laws and push back on our school districts in blue states. We don't just give up on them.
Yeah, after the day after Trump won the election, my wife, she's from Wisconsin. She went to University of Wisconsin-Madison, so I think she's a double agent. I'm not sure, but no, I don't think she is. But she doesn't. She hates this stuff. Is the mother, because she's worried about my job. She's worried about I got 2 cancers. She's worried about my health, all this stuff. So I had the FBI here before, and then I had the state police here because of the Republicans. I'm calling them out. Right, my state senator would not. His daughter plays volleyball with my daughter. I'm like, would you help me? They're attacking me. Would you speak out and say porn doesn't belong in our daughter's school? Right? Oh, Terry, if I get involved, it's political. I'm like, I don't understand. He goes, if I get involved, it'll be a distraction. I found out he's taken a couple $100,000 from the teachers union. They bought his silence. So I'm attacking him. And then I got don't go after her. I'm like, no, screw that. If he doesn't defend his own child, he's not going to defend my own child.
Uh-oh, you got another...
Everyone's got to read this book. It's a really, really good book. How they flipped Colorado from red to purple to blue. And all it is basically they united amongst the common theme that we're all Democrats, no matter what that means. And they pooled a bunch of money into it. And what's happened here in Colorado, great book. What I assume what's happened in Illinois as well is that a lot of the people who were even in as Republicans have just been completely bought off by the teachers union. The reason when we think of that is the teachers union was the primary funder of flipping this entire state. They would have their weekly meetings at the teachers union. So they have this weird stranglehold even on Republicans. And it happens here in Colorado. We have 23 Republican House reps. Only 5 of them are real Republicans. And I'm a former Biden voter, and I'm saying that.
Yeah. We have super majority Democrats, historic of Democrats, historically low Republicans ever. And I mean, it's always been a blue state just forever here, but it's like unbelievable. They have, we have no power control. So what happens is we get Republicans here, like Senator John Curran. He's 6'8". He's like the Jolly Green Giant. He's a weasel. He's got no balls, and so so they want to keep their own seat. You know what I mean? They're more worried about their own seat. So I had other Republicans pummel him, say, "Hey, listen, you need to say something. Why can't you say something? Right? It's porn. Just say something." And then he got back to him. He goes, "Well, you don't understand the long strategic vision." I'm like, well, "What? We're going to be totally blue? So you don't want to piss off the Democrats? You're not helping your daughter."
Yeah. Well, that's the big problem. And it's not just blue states. We have all these undocumented Democrats in Congress too. People that are behind their name, but they still act like leftists. And I do think some of them are plants that they get in there knowing that they are going to sabotage the Republicans, side with the Democrats over and over again. But maybe they'll vote with on a few issues. Maybe they are anti-abortion or something like that. But otherwise, they just they're there basically to support the left. But it isn't just like it's the lack of courage, the lack of a testicular fortitude, or being bought off. It's a lot of them. They still believe this myth that Republicans should ease off the social issues, that as long as they don't touch those and they stick to Republican issues, guns and taxes, things like that, that they'll have relevancy. And I don't know if they're like waiting for some mystic messiah to get here before they act or what it is, but that's the big problem. If they had the courage to speak up, people will unite behind them. A lot of times people are waiting for a leader. Like Terry, you mentioned all those parents that were upset there, but still wouldn't do anything going forward. They need the courage to stand, and a lot of times that just requires one brave leader, like either of you, to put to take that first step, and then other people will follow you. But I feel like a lot of these people have like battered wives syndrome almost. Like they know what to do, they know what's right, but they're afraid they're going to get beat by the media again if they speak out and they say anything. They're more afraid of the media than they are their own constituents, and that's a big part of the problem.
So speaking of, I want to do a plug for Paul, my podcast co-host on Thursday. So Paul Drabek's a 42-year-old combat vet with young children. We met, his kids are young, but he wants to get ready because it's so bad, right? So we met fighting at the school board, and we became friends, and he's on the show. Well, he's running for village council, and I call it Downers Grove, the little San Francisco of the Midwest. We used to be red of red. All the cancer Democrats came and took over our whole county and everything. They ruined Chicago, and then the cancer spread out here, and they took over our area. So now he's running. So we have 3 open seats at Downers Grove. And so you got 3 Democrats running, 3 Republicans. 2 of the Republicans will not say anything about this. Oh, I want to play it even keel. Paul is saying this is no good. He's openly saying, even though he's village council, they're attacking, well, you don't control the library. That's a separate taxing entity. Oh, you don't control the school. No, you don't. But our mayor's supposed to be a Republican. For 4 years, I asked him, I said, would you say something? He won't say anything. He's supposed to be a Republican. These guys are running right now, and they're scared they're going to upset they think the Democrats are going to vote for him because they don't say they're against porn and drag queens. They're nuts. So Paul is the first one running with courage and saying, hey, I'll be a voice of the parents. I'll be a voice of your children. No, I don't control the library. No, I don't control the schools. But you know what? I'm a father. I could have an opinion and say this is right, wrong, or not. These other guys aren't saying nothing. Absolutely nothing. But we support you behind your back. Oh, yeah, we're with you.
Go, Paul. These social issues do matter. These social issues swayed the election. The she is for they, them commercial was the most persuasive, influential commercial of this entire election cycle. These social issues do matter. And they're like an 80-20, 90-10 issue. I mean, even New York Times polling has showed that 80% of Americans, 65% of Democrats don't believe men should be in women's spaces, that parents should be lied to, that kids should be mutilated. They really are important issues for re-election for these politicians. They're really misguided about this. And it's not a right or left issue. It's a right versus wrong issue.
Good for people.
Why is this political? Protecting kids should be on both sides. It shouldn't be so political. We're just here to protect our kids.
Yep, I say
We've
it's
all got a vested
good
interest.
versus evil. It's not like just, I mean, it's good versus evil because there's evil on the Republican side. I'm a Republican because they're a lesser of two evils. That's it. I'm not. There are a lot of. I don't like a lot of things they do, but they're the lesser of two evils. So I'm a Republican now. The Democrats have lots of evil.
Yeah, unfortunately. And that is what we're seeing now, though. I think when you talk about the percentage of even Democrats that understand where this issue is everybody has a moral compass. The problem is there's a large percentage of people, primarily on the left right now, where their moral compass is backwards. It's pointing south, not north. And I really wonder, what is really in their heart? Are they mentally ill where they just don't understand this issue, or is this about manipulation? Is it about they understand that in the long term, for them to win, that they've got to recruit more voters, and this is an avenue to do it? And it also props up their friends in the medical industrial complex. Every person that's trans is worth millions of dollars in the pocket of big pharmaceutical and all the doctors that they're going to need throughout their lifetime, because a lot of these things never heal. You're going to be on the cross-sex hormones or the other drugs for the rest of your life, and they're going to be making a profit off of that. There are also people that are going to need more care and more support, so they're going to be dependent on these other leftists. So is this just a recruiting tool? Is that how they're looking at it? This is a way to spray their vote to gain votes. Because I mean, again, we've seen them play other games. We talked about, we mentioned intersectionality earlier. That's the same thing. You're manipulating people from a certain race or a class or a certain whatever category they want to divide people into, and you're saying that we're the only ones in your camp that are going to support you, and don't look at them, don't even talk to them. They're your enemy no matter what. That it's this divisiveness that is at their core, and this evil. At the end of the day, this is pure evil.
Yeah.
I have a theory on just your typical Democrat voters, because I used to be one. It's twofold. It's CNN and MSNBC. If everyone would just turn off their CNN, the world would go back to normal. Like we could heal ourselves really easily. It's that, and it's toxic kindness or toxic empathy. If everyone would also read Allie Beth Stuckey's new book called Toxic Empathy, it explains everything. Their compass is skewed. They don't understand what good and right and true is. And so they're misguided in their attempt to be a kind, good human, but they're doing it all wrong. Like most of them don't open a Bible. They don't understand what the true moral compass is. And so they're just practicing what I call toxic empathy, toxic kindness.
Our library, Downers Grove Library, has so the LGBTQ Nazis, right? They're in the politics, the schools, the library, and they just had pride reading for 2-year-old babies. Like they don't even speak, right? So I'm like going back and forth on Facebook. Oh, well, there's other parents that have, same-sex couples, and like my neighbor's gay. They wouldn't want their kids to I know they don't want their kids doing that stuff at all. But I got lily white women. Oh, that's what they need. Is like they don't even speak yet. They don't even speak. Then we had at our church transvestite Santa. I always say transvestite just to piss them off. They had transvestite Santa for kids that are so innocent. They believe in Santa Claus. They believe their gifts come from Santa Claus, not their parents. And these whack jobs are injecting sexuality and transvestites into Santa Claus for what? I mean, the kids don't know. If they're so innocent, they believe in Santa. They're children, just like our children. They're children, and you guys are trying to ruin them.
Well, Terry, they've got to punch the patriarchy, and the only way to do that is to destroy our morals, our history, our founding, the things that used to bind our country together. And if that means they've got to introduce Tranta to do that, that's what they're going to do. They're going to pollute anything that used to bring people together. And unfortunately, it's been quite effective in some areas, and that's why things are divided the way they are right now. But I want to kind of comment on something that you said earlier. You mentioned, a lot of people, it's MSNBC, it's CNN, and that's why they are the way they are. And I think that's part of also why we're seeing this falling out right now with voters for the left is CNN, MSNBC, ABC, NBC, the New York Times, they've all burnt their reputation to the ground over the last 12 months to 2 years. Anybody with 2 brain cells to rub together, when they watched MSNBC or any of the dinosaur media, when they see 89% of the stories about Trump are negative and 87% of the stories about Kamala Harris, with all the networks combined, those were the numbers. You go check Media Research Center. When they see that, they're not idiots. They know not everything Trump says or wants to do is evil. And when they see 180-degree coverage on the few issues they actually agreed on, like no taxes on tips and ending taxes on Social Security, when Kamala says it's a good thing, when Trump says it's a bad thing. I literally saw a story the other day that now they're trying to say no taxes on tips is going to be harmful to people in the service industry. But the people in the middle just aren't buying the lie anymore. And I think the mainstream media losing so much of their credibility is part of why we've seen this swing of the pendulum so far to the right. That's become blatantly obvious to the people in the middle that this is agenda driven, that this is the deep state putting the words in the mouth of the mainstream media. And people are seeing through it. And that's why we're seeing the rise of independent journalism, of podcasts like this one, networks like X American News, alternatives to the mainstream. And we're going to continue to see that rise. I don't see this slowing down anytime soon. I think 2026 is going to be just a massacre of Democrats, figuratively, not literally, that we're going to have huge gains in the House, pick up a few seats in the Senate, and this pattern is going to continue, especially since they've chosen these hills to die on of supporting this LGBTQ tranny madness in our schools and with our children, embracing the invaders that are streaming over our border, the Tren de la Agua and others, fighting for their civil rights as, the kind of criminals that America needs. And again, we have the Hamas wing of the Democrat Party now. This is now obvious. The Tesla terrorists, when again, a lot of people are hitting are their own allied left-leaning voters that bought Teslas because it was environmentally good to do. But I guess now the planet doesn't matter. Now it's okay to burn down Tesla dealerships, key cars, and smear poop on them. But that's always the left. When they don't get their way, they resort to terrorism. They're really just returning to their roots. Everybody remembers, following the Civil War, the Democrats, the KKK was the terrorist wing of the Democrat Party. But they've always had some group or another that was the object of their hate. And originally it was blacks, it was the Irish, it was the Jews. Now it's whites and Asians and anybody on the right. But they always operate by hate and terrorism and violence. This is their real. The only political issues that have stayed constant for the left. Otherwise, they will embrace any position they think that furthers their agenda, and their real agenda is just accumulating more power over the rest of us. And there's my soapbox for the night.
I'm almost so I live in Colorado, where we just had the AOC Bernie rally a few days ago, where legit, I think about 30,000 people really did show up here and I'm almost giddy about it.
Did you see over half of them were apparently like federal workers, probably, that they had attended, 60-something% of them had attended more than 10 events for Kamala Harris, AOC, or others. And it was 30-something or 28%, man, sorry, the numbers are wrong, that had attended more than 20 events in the last year.
In other states. Yeah. And I'm not surprised by that, but I'm almost giddy at the idea of them pushing AOC as their golden goose. Go for that. Do that. Yes. Please double down on your insanity and watch what happens when election time comes around. Go ahead. Go with that. Because most of us here in the middle are starting to wake up to sanity. I mean, we're turning off our CNN and we're starting to have conversations. And God, can I just say, God bless you, Terry, and both of you men for speaking up, because as you alluded to at the beginning, it really is mostly mama bears who are out here fighting this fight, and it's lonely. And I've said so many times, where are the men? And I'm Riley Gaines is a friend, and when she tells her story about I'm in that locker room, and I just thought surely a man's going to come in, a dad, a coach, someone's going to come in this room and rip this grown ass man with his private parts hanging out of my locker room, and they didn't. Yeah. No man showed up, and I thought, okay, I'm going to have to fight for myself as like a 20-year-old girl. And so I'm always just touched to see a dad standing up for their kids. There's nothing more important than protecting our kids. And it's a shared responsibility that every person in this country has got to take seriously, whether or not you have kids. Yes. That's the next generation. They're going to be changing your diaper in 40 years. You know what I mean? You need to care.
Well, a lot sooner for me. I always say that people don't realize, we're in the war. We're in a war. We're in the middle of the war, and we're losing. We're losing badly, right? And just because Trump won, the war just started, really. I mean, because we can't expect this man to do everything for us. we have to take advantage of this. I'm not like super spiritual, but it's like, I'm really glad that, he won. And I wish he would. I'm glad he lost the second time. You know why? Because all this crazy shit happened, right? And it seemed like it happened for a reason. And he wouldn't be able to do what he's doing now if he went back to back, right? Because he had all those rhinos and he would be scared to overreach. Now the country's like, what the hell happened? And they support him, right? So I think it was for the best that this happened the way it did.
Yeah. I say that a lot. People go, when is this all going to stop? And I say, when enough people get hurt. I got punched in the face with reality. Otherwise, I still would have been voting for them and watching CNN. So when enough people get punched in the face with what's happening, that's what has to happen. And I do think we're seeing people really waking up across the board.
Agreed. Aaron, what's the best place for our audience to follow you and find out more information? And is there anything that they can do to help you fight back?
Yes. So I go by Aaron for Parental Rights on all platforms, Aaron #4 Parents on X. And my organization's called Protect Kids Colorado. It's protectkidscolorado.org. Anyone can get involved from any state, but our primary goal right now is passing citizens ballot initiatives. So we're one of the about half of the states have this process where if you can't get a law through the legislature, you can get it on the ballot if you get enough signatures. And so this year we're going to run a ban on human trafficking of children. If you buy or sell a child for sex, it's a Class 1 felony, life in prison, no chance of parole. Banning these sex change procedures for children and keeping men out of women's spaces, locker rooms, and sports. So anyone can get involved. We need donations. We need volunteers. We really are trying to set the precedent here in Colorado and create the model that any blue state can roll out so that we, the people, can take back our state.
Oh, that's good. I just started Save Illinois Coalition to do a referendum to remove sanctuary state status for us. Kind of the same thing,
Yeah, I got tips. We'll connect.
Definitely. And then you guys, whoever's watching, this is a perfect reason to vote for Paul Drabick next Monday. And he's going to have a fundraiser this Thursday. Guess who's going to be the speaker? Mr. Porn Dad. I'm the porn dad. They hate my posters. They go nuts. He's dragging those around everywhere. I'm going to talk about you guys. So thank you, Aaron. It's great to have your message because we're going to be putting it all over the neighborhood, making sure everybody sees this and they vote for Paul.
I love it. Go, Paul. The other thing, too, is just the movie. You played the trailer, but it's out now. It's artclubmovie.com. And my favorite part about the film is my husband's role in it. He's a quiet, shy, he's an engineer. He does not like to be in front of a camera, but he recognized that we needed to have a mom and dad perspective because we fought this beast as a family. And if dad hadn't have played the role he played in our daughter's life, she would have still been in the cult. Truly, it was dad that stepped in and saved her. So I encourage people it's free, watch it and share it. When people go, this isn't happening, just share my film. We share multiple family stories and prove that it absolutely is happening and explain how and why and what do we do about it.
Thank you for what you did. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to get a Twitter space organized sometime next week after I get back from Romania. Get you and Jeff and a few others that have suffered through what you have, and bring some more attention to this. To the audience, please like, share, and subscribe. Help us to continue to grow so we can bring more people the news the mainstream media doesn't want you to hear. And they'll be back with more Behind Enemy Lines on Thursday when Paul will be here. And
we have DJ, the little black kid that had cancer at the Trump's speech. Him and his dad are going to be on.
Yes,
that's awesome.
Yeah, TJ, sorry. Yeah. So yeah, please join. I'm looking forward to having that little kid on, man.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Thanks again, guys. They'll be back on Thursday. Turn in for DJ Taylor, right?
Yeah.
For DJ. Thanks again, guys.